Hey, and welcome back to the second half of the match review for game week 4. Let's take a look at the Leicester Man City game, which was an interesting game. I was pretty concerned as a Kasper Schmeichel owner prior to this game because I really didn't like the look of Leicester defensively leading into this game. I think the international break came at a good time, though, for them with the chance to get Vestergaard back into the team. Johnny Evans returning from injury, he came on as a second half substitute. So they actually did a bit better defensively than I was anticipating. Yes, they've lost the game to a mighty team in Man City, and they've given up an XG of 2.48, which is pretty comfortable loss, I would say. But they actually acquitted themselves, I think, or comported themselves a bit better defensively than I would have expected. So it was a more tight contest than I was anticipating, and let's see if that's played out in the observations that we can make from the match stats here. So first thing I made was that, or thought rather, was that importance of Vestergaard. So if you have a look at the number of shots that Man City had, 25 shots, we can see whether or not there are any significant XGs here. So Grealish had a decent chance, 0.32. That's not insignificant, is it? And the rest of the chances as we go through these all tend to be comparatively low quality chances in terms of the XG numbers, which I think is actually backed up. I think they defended well, defended resolutely with lots of heroic blocks and what have you, which was sort of more encouraging if you happen to own a Leicester defensive asset, as I do, then that's something that you could perhaps keep hold of in future games. Obviously, playing Man City is not a game that you would expect them to keep a clean sheet in, and so it proved. But they acquitted themselves a bit better than I would have thought, and I think they're going to prove a tougher nut to crack over the coming weeks than perhaps originally thought. They also created a few chances of their own, particularly on the counter-attack. So Vardy scored from an offside position. You also had a decent chance for the new signing Lookman from Fulham. There were other chances as well for Harvey Barnes. I want to find that one as well. That's the way to do it. He hit the bar with a headed effort, which was pretty well done, actually, and a bit unfortunate. So his owners are being frustrated, Barnes, but he came close to scoring in what was always going to be a tough fixture. Vardy is a bit of an enigma, as we know. Look, that's his involvement in the game: 18 touches, 12 passes. You're never going to get that much involvement from owning a Jamie Vardy, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to justify that inclusion of a player when you've got such competition in the forward positions, as we know. But it was still a performance that to me suggested that Leicester are going to cause teams problems, particularly on the counter-attack. Man City, it was kind of a performance that we would have expected, really, I guess, in many ways. They had a lot of the ball, and they created a lot of chances. 25 shots is a lot for any team. It's about standard for Man City, I guess. 8 on target is, again, decent. But it wasn't dominant, I wouldn't say, or any more dominant than you would expect from Man City in most games, really. So not too much to learn from this particular game. Cancelo stands out, doesn't he, with the haul that he got in this particular game, and he does look to be settling into that left back. So we know Mendy is otherwise indisposed at the moment, and Zinchenko is providing the competitional rotation there. Champions League being played this week as well. But look, I mean, he started really, really solidly there with 90 minutes in all of the first 4 games. That's never a given for any outfield player under Guardiola, as we know. 12-pointer in this particular game, followed by, or rather following a couple of clean sheets as well. He's a player who's easy to like at 6 million, and Man City always get a lot of clean sheets simply from the amount of possession that they have. Let's have a little look at their upcoming fixtures as well. They've got this lovely one in game week 5, home game against Southampton, who have historically caused them problems, actually. Fix is predicting in effect a clean sheet, I guess. You've then got this really rotten, about as hard as it can get, I should say, Chelsea and Liverpool away. Yes, they could clean sheet in both of those, but those are the toughest fixtures in the league. You could make a reasonable case for, and then it gets a lot better, doesn't it? So Man City defensive assets will always be a sensible idea, and Cancelo is standing out right now. One of the people who attracted a lot of attention before this game was Fernan Torres. So it was a concern, for anyone who's brought him in. Perfectly sensible call. He comes with risk, as we know, as all Man City players do to an extent. But 63 minutes, 3 points, pretty high XG. That was from a really good chance that he had. And decent number of shots, I guess, for an hour or just over an hour's game time. But, owning Fernan Torres, you'll always be wondering, is it his time to be benched? Is it his time to be coming off early? I think you've just got to accept that. I think he will get chances. I think he will score goals this season. But owning him, you are going to get this this type of scenario where you're looking at around about an hour on occasion. Certainly the 90 minutes can happen. But this is at a time when you've got Phil Foden coming back from injury. You've got Kevin De Bruyne to come back from injury. Minutes are always going to be shared, unfortunately. So let's move on and have a little look at a team that's been impressing me of late, and that's Wolves. They were travelling to Watford this weekend, and I think the XG sums up this game really nicely. Actually, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of questionable, but Wolves were impressive in this game, and they've been impressive the last few game weeks, despite results not necessarily reflecting that. They created a lot, so let's see if that was backed up. They had 14 shots. I know that's difficult when you followed the Man City analysis, but 14 shots in an away match is impressive, is enough to be expecting to score at least one, probably 2 goals from. You've got high expected goal returns here. New player Huang, who looked good when he came on. They're looking like a decent FPL option to me. My thoughts were that I still like the look of Jimenez. I know he would have been a frustrating own so far, or hold if you happen to pick him up early. I just get the feeling that it's going to happen for him based on how his performance felt during the game, and in terms of those highlights. Like Watford weren't impressive at the back, and one shot doesn't look particularly threatening. Heat map, that's fine to me as a forward, possibly a little bit wider than you would always want, but about his average position, that's fine. That's still central. We know historically Raul Jimenez has been a FPL goldmine, really. So I'm still expecting those returns to come. They've got a lot of attacking players now to, I think, support him, and I think there will be returns around the corner. It's going to be an interesting one as to whether or not people would decide to punt for him over, for example, Patrick Bamford, for example, Dominic Calvert-Lewin replacement, or Mikel Antonio replacement. But my observations were that Jimenez looked like he was likely to start returning points. So that might be something that you bear in mind. If we have a little look at his output, let's see if I can spot him. There we go, Raul Jimenez. Attempted assists, a couple of attempted assists. Yeah, hard to make a compelling case based on the stats from that. So I would say that my eye test observation were that he impressed. It's going to be hard to justify based on this information here, but we shall see whether or not the upcoming fixtures, which do lend themselves to the thought process that he is going to be getting chances, whether or not he'd be ahead of the curve. I thought eye test, he looked good. Stats are kind of questioning that observation a little bit, I would say. Whether or not you then want to use the fixture overlay to help supplement that choice, certainly something that I would recommend. Brentford at home, Southampton away, more difficult game, I would say. They looked quite resolute against West Ham this week. We'll come on to that. Newcastle's an attractive fixture. Villa is not the easiest game, but especially as it's a local derby, but still opportunities there, you would think. And then Leeds are arguably the most porous team defensively in the league right now. So there's an opportunity here for him to impress, and I think there's a possibility that that's going to happen based on what I saw on the weekend. Semedo looked good too, in one sense. In terms of the quality of his chances, so I would expect his XG to be high, and indeed it is. But he was wasteful. He really was. He had chances that you'd expect to convert, and he didn't take them. So, degree of caution about that. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to be racking up huge returns, because I didn't feel confident about him when he actually got through on goal. Hwang gives them, I think, something different up front. So he only came on for the last half hour or 27 minutes, picked up 8 points in that return, so on that time, which is impressive. 32 BPS is a great return in that period as well. It's going to be a watching brief, I think, to see whether or just to see how they set up offensively, because they've got loads of different options now with, as I mentioned, of course, Jimenez. You've got Traore slightly deeper. They've got Trincao, who looked good for the first hour as well. They sort of featured him on the Match of the Day highlights. Let's just have a little look at all players and the average positions. Yeah, this kind of backs up my point. I didn't even mention Podence there. Traore is actually far more advanced average position, which is encouraging for any owners. Jimenez, Semedo. Gosh, that's an odd position for Hwang. I guess running from deep is actually probably how he impressed, and driving through those runs against a pretty tired and weak Watford backline in that second half. But this is kind of my point. There's a bit of uncertainty as to how that attack is going to be set up. We know Jimenez is the default number 9. So that might be a security of selection there. I just think they're going to be well placed to return some points. Defensively, I like Sarr as well. In goal, Jose Sarr. I think he started well and looks like a safe keeper. And you've got cheap options at the back as well with Connor Cody leading the way. I think he's just still at 4.5 million. He's not going to return any attacking wise. Yeah, 4.5 million. So there are defensive options there. I've mentioned their fixtures as well. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Watford, worrying. Didn't like them at all in this game. Average position wise here, too much going on at the back, not enough going on up in the penalty area. They've got 2 huge games, but I would not be targeting any of their assets right now. Sarr will get some attention, probably the only one who's threatening and looks like assured of his selection up top. I know there was some attention for Dennis as well. One shot for him. I wouldn't be recommending Watford based on what I saw in the Wolves game. The Brentford game was ever so tight. Not loads to report here. It was yeah. I mean, the XG here kind of backs it up. It was really tight. The odd goal nicked it. Trossard got the winner in this particular game. Draw would have been completely reasonable. If Brentford had nicked it 1-0, I don't think that would have been completely shocking either. I think they've started the season well. I don't think they're going to be whipping boys, particularly at home. So that was an important observation, I think. I think when you see Brentford away in the fixture ticker, yes, it's a good fixture, of course, from an attacking team perspective, but I just don't, right now, whilst they've got their team at full fitness, I'm not seeing them conceding loads of chances. 4 shots for Brighton in this game. That's nothing, really. All of them pretty far out as well. I mean, it's a good defensive performance, isn't it? And attacking wise, they had it was Mbuemo. Let's go with Mbuemo as the pronunciation there. He impressed in terms of being active. Loads of well, not loads, but he had presentable opportunities. But he didn't convert any. Didn't look like he was that confident in front of goal to me. And I think there's better options at his price point. So if you've got him, you could make a case for holding based on this. But if you're looking for someone in and around that price point, which I think is still at 5.5. Let's see if I can spot him. Yeah, 5.5 still. personally, I prefer Conor Gallagher at that point. I think he's a better option. So we'll look at their upcoming fixtures. I've just mentioned I think Wolves are a pretty tough game, defensively resolute. That's a smelly run, isn't it? Wolves, West Ham away, Chelsea home, and Leicester home. So no, I don't like him as an option. He impressed in terms of having the opportunities from match of the day, but I think there's better options elsewhere. Brighton-wise, as we just said, didn't create hardly anything, to be fair. Perfectly fine in possession. So I don't think attacking-wise you'd be necessarily looking there in any way, shape or form. It's defensively where you'd be focused. Sanchez in goal is a fine option. Let's just have a little look at the BPS here. Yeah, you've got some Brighton players here Brighton defensive players here who, in games like this, just picking up those high BPS returns, which is not unheard of. So Trossard even scoring the winner in a 1-0 game. He's only just nicked the maximum BPS score there, despite playing 90 minutes. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I think there's justification there. Duffy's the budget way in. 4.2, he's had a couple of price rises, but still super affordable. And it's kind of fixtures don't really matter for people at that price, do they? It's you're picking up somebody who is as cheap as they can get. So Shane Duffy, welcome back. He's back in people's thoughts. But that was it really from them. There wasn't loads to recommend them really, and what was a very tight game. Speaking of which, the West Ham game, which was a 0-0, we will just give a bit of attention to this one. Saints did well in the first half, I thought. And they probably had the better of the chances, I thought, particularly second half, where they brought some players on and fashioned some chances. But look, it's another tight game. Both XGs are under 1. Similar kind of feedback from the last game that we just analysed, really. Brozier came on. He's the player they've got on loan from Chelsea. 2 shots, which is not particularly impressive in of itself, but when you consider it was only in 16 minutes, something to bear in mind. Might be something that we'll look at longer term. But I actually think it confuses things still further from a Southampton perspective. Armstrong looked good initially with somebody on my watch list, but you've also got how he's going to coexist with Che Adams, for example. I'm not actually convinced Hassan Hüttel's made his mind up yet on how this is going to work up front, and uncertainty in FPL is not something we particularly like. So attacking wise, I think it's a stay away from Saints. Antonio's red card is going to be upheld. That was 2 yellows. Yeah, it was a sending off, and he'll miss the next game. But if we just choose an arbitrary player here, darling of let's have a little look here. Let's choose Kufal. Upcoming fixtures. So wouldn't necessarily expect much in that game, home game against Man United, particularly. I don't think it'll be a rout in any means, anyway, for Man United, who are just being beaten by young boys today in the Champions League. But look at this after we get back. Leeds and Brentford for Antonio in the next 2. So I think there's a compelling case to be made for keeping Antonio, who despite the sending off is still what has he got? I think he's got like just under 40 points so far for the season. Let's take a little look, which is absolutely fine. It's averaging 7 or so points per game. We've got here 13, 29. Yeah, it's like just under 40 points after 4 games. And that's including a sending off. I mean, you can't really make too much of a case, I think, for against keeping him. There are other options, but I think if you can field a strong 11, I think keeping Mikel Antonio makes a lot of sense personally. He didn't have his best game. It was a tough game. He defended well, but who knows? Maybe the weekend rest will bode well for him. Livramento at right back did create a chance as well. XA 0.12, so it wasn't a great chance. But look, he's in the team. 90 minutes in all of the first 4 games. Clean sheet for Southampton, and he's 4.1 million. So lots of value at the back right now in terms of those real budget options. So that completes the run of the match of the day review notes, and we're going to take a look at the next couple of games, which came from Sunday, which is the game I watched in full, and then Monday Night Football as well.